Lieutenant Ethan Cole came home from a secret mission at 2 a.m., only to find out his entire team of 8 Navy SEALs was declared dead in a training accident 3 days ago. But that was impossible. He had just seen them alive 72 hours ago in Syria. Within minutes, military police burst through his door and arrested him for treason. His own commanding officer, Colonel Marcus Wade, whispered the terrifying truth in his ear. "I killed your team because they knew too much. You were supposed to die with them." Will Ethan escape this deadly trap? Can he prove his innocence before Wade silences him forever? Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. Lieutenant Ethan Cole kicked open the door of his small apartment in Virginia Beach. His combat boots were still covered in Syrian desert sand. He had just returned from a classified Black Ops mission that officially never happened. His hands were shaking from exhaustion after 72 hours without sleep. He turned on the TV to check the news. What he saw made his blood freeze. Every news channel was showing the same breaking story. 8 Navy SEALs from his team were dead, killed in what the military called a routine training accident in California. The screen showed photos of his brothers, men he trusted with his life. Ethan stared at the TV in complete shock. Training accident? That was impossible. He had just seen these men alive 3 days ago in Syria. They were supposed to return home next week. Someone was lying. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "They know you survived. Run." Before Ethan could process the message, his front door exploded inward. 6 military police officers in full tactical gear stormed into his apartment. Their rifles were pointed directly at his chest. Red laser dots danced across his body. "Lieutenant Ethan Cole, you are under arrest for treason, espionage, and selling classified intelligence to enemy forces," the lead officer shouted. Ethan raised his hand slowly. His mind was racing. "What are you talking about? I just got back from Dash." "Shut up, traitor," another officer yelled. He slammed Ethan face first into the wall. Cold metal handcuffs bit into his wrists as they dragged him outside. In the parking lot, Ethan saw someone who made his stomach drop. Colonel Marcus Wade, his commanding officer, was standing near a black SUV. Wade was wearing a perfectly pressed uniform with a cold smile on his face. "Colonel Wade, sir, there's been a mistake," Ethan called out desperately. "I just completed the Syria mission. My team is still Dash." Wade walked closer and leaned in so only Ethan could hear. His voice was ice cold. "Your team is dead because I needed them dead. And now you're going to prison for the rest of your life. Or maybe you'll just disappear like the others." Ethan's eyes went wide with shock. His heart was pounding. You killed them? What?" Wade's smile grew wider. "Because they knew too much. We sold mission intelligence to the highest bidder. Your team was supposed to die in Syria, but you survived. That's unfortunate for you." The military police threw Ethan into the back of an armored transport van. Through the small window, he saw Wade making a phone call and laughing. In that moment, Ethan realized the horrible truth. His own government had betrayed him. His brothers were murdered by the man they trusted most. And now he was being framed as a traitor with evidence he never created. As the van drove toward the military prison, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He would escape. He would find proof. And he would make Marcus Wade pay for every single life he destroyed. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The van hit a bump in the road. Ethan noticed something that made his blood run cold. One of the guards had his weapon safety off, with his finger near the trigger. The other guard was avoiding eye contact. They weren't taking him to prison. They were taking him somewhere quiet to finish the job. Wade was tying up loose ends tonight. Ethan closed his eyes and started counting. He had maybe 20 minutes before they reached the kill zone. 20 minutes to plan an escape. 20 minutes before he became another training accident statistic. But Ethan Cole wasn't ready to die. Not when the real traitor was still walking free. Not when his brother's murders would go unpunished. He had survived impossible missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. He had fought terrorists, warlords, and enemy soldiers. But now his greatest enemy wore the same uniform he did. Ethan looked at the guards again. He calculated the distance, the angles, the timing. His hands were cuffed, but his mind was sharp. He had one chance to escape. One chance to stay alive long enough to expose the truth. The van turned onto a dark highway heading away from the city. No streetlights. No other cars. Just empty road and darkness ahead. It was time to move. Ethan watched the guard on his left yawn and check his watch. It was 3:15 a.m. The second guard was texting on his phone, breaking protocol. These weren't elite soldiers. They were cleanup crew. Wade had sent men who wouldn't ask questions. The van took a sharp turn onto a dirt road. Trees blocked out the moonlight. This was it. The kill zone. Ethan shifted his weight and felt something dig into his hip. His tactical pen. They had missed it during the rushed arrest. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Pull over here, the first guard said into his radio. We'll make it quick. The van stopped. The engine went quiet. Ethan heard both guards chamber rounds into their pistols. His heart was racing, but his hands were steady. The back door opened. Cold night air rushed in. The first guard stepped up, pointing his weapon at Ethan's head. Nothing personal, Cole. Just following orders. Ethan moved like lightning. He rolled forward and kicked the guard's knee with brutal force. The bone cracked. The guard screamed and fell. His pistol hit the ground. The second guard raised his weapon, but Ethan was faster. He spun and drove his tactical pen into the guard's throat. The man gurgled and dropped his gun, clutching his neck. Ethan grabbed the fallen pistol with his cuffed hands. He fired 2 shots at the driver through the van's metal wall. The shooting stopped. Silence filled the air. He searched the first guard's belt and found the handcuff key. His hands were free in seconds. Ethan collected both weapons, the guards' phones, and their tactical vests. He checked the van's GPS system. They were 40 miles outside Virginia Beach in the middle of nowhere. Perfect place for a murder. Wade had planned this carefully. Ethan pulled out one guard's phone. It had a single contact labeled Cleanup Authorized. He opened the message thread. His blood boiled as he read, Target eliminated. Training accident confirmed. No witnesses. The message was scheduled to send automatically in 5 minutes. Wade was already celebrating Ethan's death. Ethan deleted the scheduled message and typed a new one. Target escaped. Cleanup team neutralized. He knows everything. He hit send and threw the phone into the woods. Now Wade would panic. Good. Scared people made mistakes. Ethan dragged the bodies into the van and wiped down everything he touched. He took their cash, weapons, and one guard's jacket. Then he started walking through the forest toward the highway. His mind was racing with questions. What evidence did Wade plant? How deep did this conspiracy go? Who else was involved? Most importantly, his wife Jennifer and his 6-year-old daughter Emma. Wade had said they were in protective custody. That was a lie. They were hostages. Ethan pulled out his personal phone from his pocket. They hadn't taken it yet. He had maybe 10 minutes before they tracked it. He dialed Jennifer's number. It rang once. Twice. Then a man's voice answered. Hello, Ethan. Still alive, I see. It was Wade. Where's my family? Ethan's voice was pure ice. Wade laughed. Safe. For now. They're at a secure facility. If you turn yourself in, I'll make sure they're taken care of. If you run, well, accidents happen to families too. You touch them and I'll dash, you'll what? You're a wanted traitor. You just killed 3 military police officers. Every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for you. You have no proof, no allies, no hope. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. You made a mistake, Marcus. You let me live. That's going to cost you everything. Big words from a dead man walking. You have 48 hours before I decide your family isn't useful anymore. Tick-tock, Ethan. The line went dead. Ethan crushed the phone under his boot and scattered the pieces. Wade was right about one thing. He had no proof. But he knew exactly where to start looking. During the Syria mission, there was a CIA analyst named Sarah Chun who handled their intelligence reports. She had asked strange questions about their mission parameters. She had seemed worried about inconsistencies in their orders. If anyone knew about Wade's corruption, it would be her. Ethan reached the highway just as dawn broke over the horizon. He flagged down a semi-truck heading north. The driver was an older man with tired eyes. "Where you headed, soldier?" the driver asked. "Washington, D.C. I can pay 200 cash." The driver looked at Ethan's stolen military jacket and the exhaustion on his face. He nodded. "Get in." No questions asked. As the truck rolled down the highway, Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. But sleep wouldn't come. All he could see were the faces of his 8 teammates. Men with families. Men with futures. All murdered because they trusted the wrong person. He pulled out the stolen cash and counted it. $300 total. Not much to start a war with, but it would have to do. By now, Wade's men would have found the bodies in the van. The manhunt would expand. His face would be on every news channel by morning. The military would call him a traitor who killed his own people. But Ethan had one advantage. He was trained to disappear. Trained to operate behind enemy lines. Trained to win against impossible odds. The only difference was that this time, the enemy wore the same uniform he once did. The truck driver turned on the radio. The morning news was starting. Ethan held his breath. Breaking news. Navy SEAL Lieutenant Ethan Cole is wanted for the murder of 3 military police officers. He is considered armed and extremely dangerous. If you see this man, do not approach. Call 911 immediately. The driver glanced at Ethan. Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. Time seemed to stop. Then the driver reached over and turned off the radio. "Like I said, son. No questions asked. I drove through Vietnam. I know what betrayal looks like." Ethan felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. Not all heroes wore uniforms. Sometimes they drove trucks at dawn and asked no questions. 3 hours later, they reached the outskirts of Washington, D.C. Ethan thanked the driver and disappeared into the morning crowds. He had 48 hours to find Sarah Chun, gather evidence, and prove his innocence. 48 hours before Wade decided his family wasn't useful anymore. The hunt had begun. But this time, Ethan wasn't the prey. He was the hunter. Washington, D.C. was crowded with morning rush hour traffic. Ethan kept his head down and bought a cheap baseball cap from a street vendor. He needed to blend in fast. Finding Sarah Chun wouldn't be easy. CIA analysts didn't advertise their home addresses. But Ethan remembered something from their mission briefings. Sarah always carried a coffee cup from a small cafe near DuPont Circle. She had mentioned it was her morning routine before work. It was a thin lead, but it was all he had. Ethan walked 12 blocks to DuPont Circle and found 3 coffee shops within 2 blocks of each other. He positioned himself across the street with a clear view of all 3 entrances. Then he waited. 2 hours passed. His legs ached. His stomach growled. But he didn't move. At 8:47 a.m., he saw her. Sarah Chun walked out of the middle cafe holding a large coffee cup. She was wearing a gray business suit and looked stressed. She kept checking her phone nervously. Ethan crossed the street and fell into step beside her. "Sarah Chun, we need to talk." She jumped and nearly dropped her coffee. Her eyes went wide when she recognized him. "Ethan Cole, you're all over the news. They're saying you killed. I didn't kill anyone who didn't try to kill me first. Wade set me up. You know something about the Syria mission. I saw it in your face during the briefings." Sarah looked around nervously. People were starting to stare. "Not here. Follow me. Stay 20 feet back." She led him through side streets and alleys for 15 minutes. Finally, she ducked into an underground parking garage and gestured for him to follow. They went to the lowest level where no cameras could see them. "You have 2 minutes to explain before I call security," Sarah said. But her hand wasn't reaching for her phone. She wanted to hear this. "Wade sold our mission intel to enemy forces. My entire team was supposed to die in Syria. I survived, so he framed me for treason and tried to have me executed last night. He's holding my family hostage. I need proof of his corruption or they die." Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I knew something was wrong. The mission parameters changed 3 times in 1 week. The intelligence we received didn't match our satellite data. I filed a report with my supervisor 2 months ago. What happened to the report? It disappeared. My supervisor told me to drop it or face consequences. Then I heard Wade got promoted and received a commendation for mission success. She paused. Ethan, if what you're saying is true, this goes higher than Wade. Someone protected him. Ethan felt his stomach drop. How high? I don't know. But Wade has been running Black Ops missions for 3 years. If he's been selling intel the whole time, we're talking about dozens of compromised operations. Maybe hundreds of millions in illegal weapons deals. Before Ethan could respond, Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. It's an emergency alert. They're saying you took a hostage matching my description. There are police units being dispatched to my apartment and my office right now. Wade was moving fast. Too fast. He's tracking you through your phone, Ethan said. We need to move now. Wait. Sarah pulled out a small USB drive from her purse. Before my report disappeared, I made a backup copy. Financial records, mission logs, encrypted communications. Everything I found. I've been carrying it for 2 months, too scared to use it. She handed it to Ethan. There's a safe house in Arlington. An old CIA asset location that's been decommissioned. Most people don't know it exists anymore. She gave him an address. There's a computer there with offline access. You can review the files without being tracked. Sirens echoed from the street level above them. Go, Sarah said. I'll tell them you forced me here and I escaped. It'll buy you time. They'll interrogate you. Wade will know you helped me. Sarah smiled grimly. Let him try. I've been wanting to take that corrupt bastard down for months. Now I have a reason. Ethan nodded with respect. Thank you. When this is over, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a hero. Just stop him. That's all the thanks I need. Ethan ran toward the opposite exit as police cars screamed into the parking garage behind him. He could hear Sarah shouting that she was okay, that the suspect had fled on foot. He emerged 3 blocks away and blended into a crowd of tourists. The USB drive in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This was it, the evidence he needed. But as he walked toward the metro station, something bothered him. Wade had mobilized police forces in less than 30 minutes. He had tracked Sarah's location instantly. He had resources that shouldn't be available to a single colonel. Sarah was right. This conspiracy went much higher than Wade. Ethan boarded a train toward Arlington and sat in the back corner. Across from him, a businessman was reading a newspaper. The headline made Ethan's blood run cold. Navy SEAL traitor believed to be planning terrorist attack. Reward: $500,000 for information. They weren't just hunting him anymore. They were turning him into a monster. Wade was making sure that even if Ethan exposed the truth, no one would believe him. The train pulled into Arlington Station. Ethan had the evidence. He had a safe house. But he also had every law enforcement agency in the country hunting him. And somewhere, Wade was holding Jennifer and Emma, waiting for Ethan to make one mistake. The war was just beginning. And Ethan was running out of time. The safe house was a rundown apartment above an abandoned laundromat in a forgotten corner of Arlington. The windows were boarded up and graffiti covered the walls. Perfect camouflage. Ethan picked the rusty lock and slipped inside. Dust covered everything. The air smelled stale. But in the back room, hidden behind a false wall panel, he found exactly what Sarah had promised. An old desktop computer with no internet connection. Completely off the grid. He powered it up and inserted the USB drive. His hands were shaking as the files loaded. What he saw made his blood boil. There were bank records showing wire transfers from offshore accounts to Colonel Marcus Wade. $15 million over 3 years. The deposits always came 2 days after classified missions ended. Mission reports with entire sections blacked out. Communications between Wade and someone identified only as Executive 7. Coordinates for weapons shipments to enemy territories. Photos of missile systems, classified aircraft designs, and troop movements. Wade hadn't just sold out one mission. He had sold out dozens. Ethan scrolled through the list of operations. Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, each one marked with the same pattern. Mission compromised. Higher casualties than expected. Enemy forces had advanced warning. Then he found a file that made him stop breathing. It was labeled Loose Ends Protocol. Inside were names. 23 names. All Special Forces operators who had served under Wade. Next to each name was a date and a status. 19 were marked, terminated, training accident. 3 were marked, terminated, combat loss. Only one was marked, active threat, Ethan Cole. His 8 teammates from Syria were on this list. But they weren't the first. Wade had been murdering American soldiers for 3 years to cover his tracks. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just corruption. This was mass murder. He kept reading and found communication logs between Wade and Executive 7. The messages were coded, but Ethan had enough intelligence training to understand them. Package delivered. Buyers confirmed. Eliminate witnesses as discussed. Mission parameters changed. Ensure no survivors from Alpha Team. Loose end from Yemen operation neutralized. Family believes training accident story. These people were talking about American lives like they were business expenses. Ethan copied everything to his second USB drive. He needed backup in case something went wrong. Then he found the most damning file of all. A video recording. He clicked play. The footage showed Wade in an expensive hotel suite meeting with 2 men in suits. One was Middle Eastern. The other was Russian. They were exchanging briefcases. The next shipment arrives Tuesday, Wade said on the video. 20 Javelin anti-tank missiles. The price is $8 million. The Russian smiled. And the American soldiers who might interfere? Wade's expression didn't change. They won't be a problem. I'll make sure they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Middle Eastern man nodded. Like the SEAL team in Syria? Exactly like that. Clean. Efficient. No questions asked. The video ended. Ethan sat back in shock. Wade had just admitted to murdering his team. On camera. This was everything he needed. But then reality hit him. He had the evidence, but he had no way to deliver it. Every government agency was hunting him. If he walked into FBI headquarters, they'd arrest him before he could say a word. Wade would make sure the evidence disappeared. He needed someone with power. Someone Wade couldn't touch. Someone who would listen. Ethan remembered something from his Navy days. Admiral Richard Stone. He was the head of Naval Special Warfare Command. A tough, honest man who had zero tolerance for corruption. Stone had personally awarded Ethan his Silver Star 3 years ago. If anyone would listen, it would be Stone. But Stone worked at the Pentagon. Getting inside would be impossible with his face on every wanted poster in the city. Ethan was still thinking when he heard footsteps outside. Multiple people, moving tactically. His instincts screamed danger. He grabbed both USB drives and his stolen pistol. Through a crack in the boarded window, he saw 6 men in tactical gear surrounding the building. They weren't police. They were military contractors. Wade's private kill team. Someone had followed Sarah. Or worse, she had been forced to give up the location. Ethan moved to the back exit. It was blocked. 2 more men stood guard with assault rifles. He was trapped. The front door exploded inward. Flash grenades filled the room with blinding light and deafening noise. Ethan dove behind a concrete support beam as bullets shredded the walls around him. He returned fire, dropping one attacker. Then another. But there were too many. A bullet grazed his shoulder. Pain exploded through his arm. He kept shooting. His pistol clicked empty. Out of ammunition. The shooting stopped. Heavy boots approached his position. A voice called out, "Cole, you're surrounded. Throw out your weapon and the USB drives. Wade says if you cooperate, your family lives. You have my word." Ethan pressed his back against the concrete beam. Blood ran down his arm. He looked at the 2 USB drives in his hand. The evidence that could expose everything. The proof that 23 American heroes were murdered by their own commander. If he gave up the drives, Wade would kill him and his family anyway. Loose ends. If he fought, he'd die here. The evidence would be destroyed. Wade would win. He needed a third option. Ethan noticed something. The old building had gas lines running through the walls. Ancient, probably leaking. The smell of gas was faint but present. He smiled grimly. Sometimes the only way out was through fire. He pulled out the lighter he'd taken from the guard's pocket last night. Flicked it once. The flame danced in the darkness. "Last chance coal," the voice shouted. Ethan shouted back, "Tell Wade I'll see him in hell." He threw the lighter at the gas line and ran toward the weakest wall at full speed. The building exploded behind him in a massive fireball. Ethan crashed through the weakened wall as flames consumed the building behind him. He hit the ground hard and rolled into the alley. Debris rained down. Screams came from inside as Wade's men tried to escape the inferno. He didn't wait to see who survived. He ran. His shoulder throbbed where the bullet had grazed him. Blood soaked through his stolen jacket. But the USB drives were still safe in his pocket. That was all that mattered. 3 blocks away, he ducked into a public restroom and locked the door. He ripped off his jacket and examined the wound. The bullet had carved a deep groove across his shoulder muscle, but hadn't hit bone. He packed it with paper towels and wrapped it tight with his shirt sleeves. It would have to do. Ethan looked at himself in the cracked mirror. His face was covered in soot and blood. His eyes were hollow from exhaustion. He looked like exactly what Wade wanted everyone to believe, a dangerous criminal. He washed his face and hands, then grabbed a discarded hoodie from the trash. Not ideal, but it would help him blend in. His mind raced through options. The evidence was solid, but getting it to Admiral Stone seemed impossible now. Wade would have the Pentagon locked down tight. Then Ethan remembered something from the files. Wade's weapons smuggling operation. The next shipment was scheduled for Tuesday. That was tonight. If Ethan couldn't prove Wade's crimes through evidence alone, he would catch him in the act. He left the restroom and found an electronics store. Used his last $100 to buy a burner phone. Then he called the only person who might help him. Sarah answered on the first ring. "Ethan, I saw the explosion on the news. I'm alive. Did they hurt you?" "They questioned me for 2 hours, but I stuck to my story. They don't have proof I helped you." She paused. "The files? Do you still have them?" "Yes. Both copies." "Sarah, I need one more favor. The weapons shipment tonight. Do you know where it's happening?" Silence on the line. "Then, there's a warehouse in Baltimore Harbor. Pier 17. I saw logistics reports for a midnight transfer. Ethan, if you go there alone, you'll die. I don't have a choice. Wade won't stop until I'm dead and the evidence is buried. I need to catch him red-handed. Then you need backup." Sarah's voice was firm. "I'll make some calls. There are others who suspect Wade. People who had their investigations shut down. Give me 2 hours." Ethan checked his watch. It was 2 p.m. The shipment was at midnight. 2 hours. Then I'm going with or without help. He ended the call and crushed the phone. Wade might be tracking Sarah's communications. Ethan spent the next hours stealing supplies. A black tactical vest from a military surplus store. A first aid kit from a pharmacy. Wire cutters, and a digital camera from a hardware store. He wasn't planning to stop the shipment. He was planning to document it. Get photos of Wade with the weapons and the buyers. Proof that couldn't be denied. At 4 p.m., a new burner phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. Red pickup truck. Corner of 5th and Madison. Keys under mat. Friend of Sarah. Ethan found the truck exactly where promised. Inside was something better than he hoped. Night vision goggles. A suppressed pistol with 3 magazines. A high-resolution camera with telephoto lens. Someone with military connections was helping him. He drove toward Baltimore as the sun set. The wound in his shoulder ached, but he pushed through the pain. 23 dead soldiers deserved justice. His family deserved to live without fear. Wade deserved to pay. Ethan reached Pier 17 at 10 p.m. The warehouse was surrounded by chain-link fence with minimal security. Too minimal. Wade was confident no one would interfere. That confidence would be his downfall. Ethan parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. He cut through the fence and moved through shadows to a position overlooking the warehouse loading dock. At 11:45 p.m., vehicles arrived. 2 black SUVs and a military transport truck. Wade stepped out of the lead SUV wearing civilian clothes. With him were the same Russian and Middle Eastern buyers from the video. The warehouse doors opened. Inside were wooden crates marked with official U.S. military stamps. Javelin missiles. Just like Wade had promised. Ethan started taking photos. Click. Wade shaking hands with the Russian. Click. The Middle Eastern buyer inspecting the missiles. Click. Money being exchanged in black duffel bags. He had everything he needed. Then headlights lit up the pier from behind him. Ethan turned and saw 6 more vehicles approaching fast. But these weren't Wade's men. They were military Humvees with official markings. Someone had tipped off the authorities. Wade saw them too. His face went white with panic. He shouted orders to his men. Destroy the evidence. Kill everyone. Gunfire erupted across the pier. Wade's security team opened fire on the approaching military vehicles. The Humvees returned fire. Chaos exploded in every direction. Ethan stayed hidden, still taking photos. This was even better. Wade caught in an active firefight while selling weapons to enemy forces. But then Wade did something Ethan didn't expect. He pulled out a detonator. If I'm going down, Wade screamed, I'm taking everyone with me. Ethan's blood went cold. Wade had rigged the missiles to explode. The blast would level the entire pier and kill dozens of American soldiers. The evidence didn't matter anymore. Ethan had seconds to stop a catastrophe. He raised his pistol and aimed at Wade across 50 yards of open ground. One shot. One chance. He pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Wade's hand. The detonator flew through the air and splashed into the harbor water. Wade screamed and clutched his bleeding hand. Ethan sprinted toward the warehouse as gunfire continued around him. Military forces were closing in on Wade's position. This was his only chance. He tackled Wade from behind and slammed him face first into the concrete. It's over, Marcus. Wade laughed through the pain. Blood dripped from his shattered hand. You think you've won? You're still a wanted traitor. No one will believe you. They will when they see these. Ethan held up the camera. Every photo. Every transaction. Your entire operation documented. Wade's smile faded. Real fear crossed his face for the first time. Military police surrounded them with weapons drawn. A tall officer stepped forward. Both of you, hands up. Now. Ethan raised his hand slowly. I'm Lieutenant Ethan Cole. This man is Colonel Marcus Wade. He's been selling classified weapons to enemy forces. I have evidence. Save it for interrogation, the officer barked. You're both under arrest. They were separated and thrown into different vehicles. As they drove away, Ethan saw the warehouse being secured. Dozens of witnesses. Physical evidence. Wade couldn't make this disappear. But as the vehicle drove toward the military detention center, doubt crept in. Wade had protected himself for 3 years. He had allies in high places. What if they buried the evidence again? The vehicle pulled into a secure facility. Ethan was processed, photographed, and locked in an interrogation room. Hours passed. No one came. Finally, at 3 a.m., the door opened. But it wasn't a military investigator. It was Admiral Richard Stone. The Admiral was in his 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He carried himself like a man who had seen combat and never forgot it. Lieutenant Cole. Stone sat down across from him. You've caused quite a mess. Sir, I can explain everything. Colonel Wade. Stone held up his hand. I know about Wade. I've known something was wrong for 6 months. I just couldn't prove it. He slid a folder across the table. Sarah Chun contacted me this afternoon. Told me everything. Then she sent me copies of the files from that USB drive. Ethan's heart raced. You've seen the evidence? Every byte. The bank records. The mission reports. The video of Wade admitting to murder. Stone's jaw tightened. 23 American soldiers dead. Hundreds of millions in stolen weapons. This is the worst betrayal I've seen in 40 years of service. Then you believe me? I believe the evidence. But here's the problem. Stone leaned forward. Wade didn't work alone. Someone high up in the Pentagon protected him. Someone with enough power to bury investigations and kill paper trails. Executive 7, Ethan said. That's what Wade called him in the communications. Stone nodded grimly. We've been trying to identify Executive 7 for months. Whoever he is, he has access to classified operations across multiple agencies. That kind of access only exists at the highest levels. What about my family? Wade said he has them in a secure facility. Stone's expression softened slightly. We found them 2 hours ago. They're safe at a military protection site. Wade's men were guarding them, but they surrendered when they realized the operation was compromised. Relief flooded through Ethan. Jennifer and Emma were alive. Safe. What happens now? He asked. Now we finish this. Stone stood. Wade is being interrogated in the next room. He's not talking, but his second in command, a man named Victor Hayes, is singing like a bird. He's giving us names, locations, everything. Will it be enough to find Executive 7? It's a start, but Wade had a fail-safe plan. If his operation was ever exposed, he had orders to execute one final mission. Something big enough to distract from the investigation and give Executive 7 time to disappear. Ethan stood. What kind of mission? Stone's face was grave. We don't know yet. But according to Hayes, it involves a terrorist attack on American soil. Wade's men have been positioned for weeks. The attack is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Where? That's what we need Wade to tell us. And he won't talk to anyone. Stone paused. Except maybe you. Ethan understood. You want me to interrogate him. I want you to make him tell us where the attack will happen. Whatever it takes. Stone's voice was ice cold. Wade murdered your brothers. He threatened your family. He destroyed your life. If anyone deserves 5 minutes alone with that traitor, it's you. Ethan followed Stone down a hallway to another interrogation room. Through the one-way mirror, he saw Wade sitting calmed and composed despite his bandaged hand. You have 10 minutes, Stone said. We'll be watching. Try not to kill him. We need him alive for trial. Ethan entered the room. Wade looked up and smiled. Ethan, come to gloat. Ethan sat down slowly. Where's the attack happening? Why would I tell you that? You've already destroyed everything I built. Let me at least enjoy watching you fail one last time. Your operation is finished. Executive 7 will abandon you to save himself. You're going to spend the rest of your life in military prison. Ethan leaned forward. But if innocent people die tomorrow because you stayed silent, your legacy won't be a corrupt officer. It'll be a mass murderer. Wade's smile faded. You think I care about legacy? I cared about money, power, things you were too naive to understand. Then care about this. Ethan's voice was deadly quiet. If that attack happens, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you never see daylight again. Solitary confinement. 23 hours a day in a cell. No visitors. No contact. Just you and the ghosts of every soldier you murdered. For the first time, fear flickered in Wade's eyes. Or, Ethan continued, you tell me where the attack is happening. You save lives. And maybe, just maybe, when you're rotting in prison, you can tell yourself you did one decent thing. Wade stared at him for a long moment. Then he spoke. Union Station. Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. rush hour. Union Station in Washington, D.C. was one of the busiest transportation hubs on the East Coast. During morning rush hour, over 50,000 people passed through its halls. If Wade's men attacked there, the casualties would be catastrophic. Admiral Stone mobilized every available unit. FBI, ATF, Homeland Security, Metro Police. By 6 a.m., over 200 agents were positioned throughout the station in plain clothes. Ethan stood in the command center van parked 2 blocks away. His shoulder was properly bandaged now, and he wore a tactical vest with a clear earpiece. Stone had given him temporary reinstatement to help stop the attack. We have eyes on all entrances, an FBI agent reported. Bomb-sniffing dogs found nothing. No suspicious packages. Stone frowned. Wade wouldn't lie about this. The attack is real. We're missing something. Ethan studied the station blueprints spread across the table. Union Station had multiple levels. Train platforms below ground. Main hall at street level. Shops and restaurants on the upper level. Maintenance tunnels connecting everything. The tunnels, Ethan said suddenly. They wouldn't come through the front. They'd use the maintenance access. Stone immediately got on the radio. All units, focus on maintenance access points. Underground approach likely. At 8:15 a.m., a maintenance worker radioed in. I've got 4 men in utility uniforms near the south tunnel entrance. They're carrying large equipment cases. Something feels wrong. Don't approach, Stone ordered. Let them enter. We'll track them inside and catch them in the act. Ethan watched the monitors showing security footage. 4 men in yellow maintenance uniforms moved through the tunnels carrying heavy cases. They walked with military precision. These were Wade's trained operators. The men split up. 2 headed toward the main hall. 2 went toward the train platforms. Multiple attack points, Ethan said. They're going to hit different areas simultaneously for maximum casualties. Stone gave orders quickly. Team Alpha, follow targets 1 and 2 to the main hall. Team Bravo, follow targets 3 and 4 to the platforms. Do not engage until we confirm what's in those cases. Could be explosives with dead man switches. Ethan grabbed his gear. I'm going in. Cole, you're not cleared for. Those are my brothers they're trying to kill. I'm going. Stone hesitated, then nodded. Stay on comms. Don't be a hero. Ethan entered the station through a side entrance. The morning rush was in full swing. Businessmen with coffee, students with backpacks, families heading to early trains. All of them completely unaware of the danger. His earpiece crackled. Team Alpha in position. Targets 1 and 2 are setting up near the main hall support columns. Cases are open. Confirming explosives. Multiple bricks of C4. Ethan's blood ran cold. Support columns. They weren't just planning to kill people. They were planning to bring down the entire ceiling. Team Bravo here. Targets 3 and 4 are placing devices on the main gas lines under the platforms. This is a secondary explosion setup. It was worse than anyone thought. First explosion collapses the main hall. Panic drives survivors toward the train platforms. Second explosion turns the underground into an inferno. Wade had planned this to kill thousands. All teams, move in now, Stone ordered. We can't wait any longer. Chaos erupted across the station. FBI agents revealed themselves and shouted orders. FBI, nobody move. Clear the area. Passengers screamed and ran in every direction. The 2 men near the support columns saw the agents and reached for detonators. Ethan was closest. He sprinted across the main hall and tackled the first man before he could press the trigger. They hit the ground hard. The detonator skittered across the marble floor. The second man grabbed his detonator and raised it high. For Executive 7. A shot rang out. The man dropped. An FBI sniper had taken him down. But Ethan's opponent was still fighting. The man threw a vicious elbow that caught Ethan in his wounded shoulder. Pain exploded through his body. He powered through it and delivered a brutal punch to the man's throat. The operative gasped and went limp. Main hall secure, Ethan reported breathlessly. 1 dead, 1 captured. His earpiece crackled with panic. Team Bravo is compromised. Targets 3 and 4 have detonators. They're demanding. The transmission cut off. Then an explosion shook the entire building. The underground platforms erupted in flames. Fire shot up through ventilation shafts. The floor beneath Ethan's feet trembled. Partial detonation, someone screamed over the radio. The gas line ignited. We have fire in the tunnels. Stone's voice cut through the chaos. Evacuate everyone now. Building structural integrity compromised. Ethan ran toward the stairs leading down to the burning platforms. FBI agents were trying to hold back panicked civilians. There are people trapped down there, a woman screamed. Ethan pushed past the agents and descended into smoke and heat. The tunnel was filled with fire. Through the flames, He saw dozens of passengers who had been waiting for trains. They were trapped behind a collapsed section of ceiling. "This way," Ethan shouted. He found an emergency exit that led through maintenance corridors. "Follow me. Stay low." He led them through choking smoke and searing heat. His lungs burned. His eyes watered. But he kept moving, kept counting heads, kept making sure no one was left behind. They emerged into daylight 3 blocks away. Ethan collapsed on the sidewalk, coughing violently. Emergency vehicles surrounded the station. Fire trucks, ambulances, news helicopters circling overhead. An EMT rushed to Ethan. "Sir, you need medical attention." He pushed her away. "Check them first." He pointed to the civilians he'd rescued. Stone appeared and helped Ethan to his feet. "The building is still standing. We saved most of them." His face was grim. "But we lost 6 people in the initial explosion. Team Bravo agents and civilians." Ethan felt the weight of those deaths. 6 people who woke up this morning not knowing it was their last day. "Did we get the other 2 attackers?" he asked. "1 dead in the explosion. 1 captured alive." Stone paused. "He's talking. Gave us the location where Wade's remaining team is hiding. And he confirmed something else." "What?" "Executive 7 isn't just protecting Wade from inside the Pentagon." Stone's voice was ice. "He's planning to disappear tonight, leaving the country with all the money and evidence of his identity." Ethan straightened despite his exhaustion. "Where?" "Private airfield in Maryland. Midnight departure." Stone met his eyes. "This is our only chance to catch him. Are you ready to finish this?" Ethan thought of his 8 teammates, of the 19 others on Wade's kill list, of the 6 people who died today. "Let's end this." The private airfield was 40 miles outside Baltimore. According to the captured operative, Executive 7 would arrive at 11 p.m. for a midnight flight to a country with no extradition treaty. Once that plane took off, he would vanish forever. Stone assembled a strike team of 12 operators. All were handpicked from units that had lost men to Wade's betrayals. They wanted justice as badly as Ethan did. "Rules of engagement are simple," Stone briefed them. "Executive 7 must be taken alive. We need him to testify and expose everyone involved in this conspiracy. Deadly force is authorized only if civilians are at risk." Ethan checked his rifle and spare magazines. His shoulder ached, but adrenaline kept him sharp. This was it, the final mission. They loaded into 3 unmarked vehicles and headed out at 9 p.m. The sun had set and darkness covered the Maryland countryside. Perfect conditions for what they needed to do. "Intel shows the airfield has minimal security," Stone said from the passenger seat. 2 guards at the gate, 1 in the control tower. Executive 7's private security team will arrive with him. "How many in his security detail?" Ethan asked. "Unknown, but assume they're well-trained and heavily armed." Executive 7 didn't stay hidden this long by being careless. They arrived at a position overlooking the airfield at 10:30 p.m. Through night vision scopes, Ethan could see a sleek private jet sitting on the runway. Ground crew was fueling it for departure. 2 guards at the gate, as reported, 1 operator whispered. "Control tower shows 1 person. Wait, I've got movement near the hangar. For additional hostiles with automatic weapons." Stone cursed quietly. "They're expecting trouble. Someone tipped them off." "Wade," Ethan said. "He must have gotten word to Executive 7 before we caught him." "Doesn't matter. We adapt." Stone pulled out a tablet showing the airfield layout. Team 1 takes the gate quietly. Team 2 secures the control tower. Team 3 with me, and Cole approaches the hangar from the west. Move in at 10:45. Questions? None. At exactly 10:45, they moved. Team 1 approached the gate using silenced weapons. 2 quiet shots. The guards dropped without raising alarm. Team 2 scaled the control tower. 30 seconds later, the radio crackled. "Tower secure. 1 hostile neutralized." Stone's team crept toward the hangar through shadows. Ethan's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. This was too easy. They were 20 yards from the hangar when floodlights exploded to life. The entire airfield lit up like daylight. "It's a trap," Stone shouted. Gunfire erupted from hidden positions. Executive 7's security team had been waiting. Muzzle flashes came from behind fuel trucks, from the hangar roof, from inside the aircraft. Ethan dove behind a concrete barrier as bullets tore up the ground where he'd been standing. He returned fire, dropping one hostile on the hangar roof. "Team 1, we need suppression fire on the fuel trucks." Stone barked into his radio. Explosions of gunfire echoed across the airfield. This wasn't a quick strike anymore. This was a full battle. Ethan spotted movement near the jet. A figure in an expensive suit was being rushed aboard by 2 bodyguards. Executive 7 was trying to escape. "He's boarding the plane," Ethan shouted. "Stop that aircraft," Stone ordered. Ethan broke from cover and sprinted toward the runway. Bullets kicked up dirt around his feet. He didn't slow down. The jet's engines were starting to whine. They were preparing for immediate takeoff. One of the bodyguards turned and fired. Ethan felt a round punch into his vest. The impact knocked him down, but the armor held. He rolled and fired back. The bodyguard fell. The second bodyguard dragged Executive 7 up the jet stairs. The door was starting to close. Ethan pushed himself up and ran harder. His lungs screamed. His wounded shoulder blazed with pain. 20 yards. 15. 10. The jet started moving. Ethan leaped and caught the bottom of the retracting stairs. His body slammed against the aircraft hull. He held on with desperate strength as the jet accelerated down the runway. The door above him opened. The remaining bodyguard pointed a pistol down at him. Ethan swung his body and kicked upward. His boot connected with the man's wrist. The pistol flew away. Ethan pulled himself up and tackled the bodyguard into the cabin. They crashed into leather seats. The bodyguard was massive, easily 250 pounds of muscle. He threw Ethan across the cabin like a toy. The jet was picking up speed. 30 seconds until it reached takeoff velocity. Ethan grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it like a club. It connected with the bodyguard's skull. The man crumpled. At the front of the cabin, Executive 7 sat calmly in a leather chair. He was in his 50s with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes. He looked more like a banker than a traitor. "Impressive, Lieutenant Cole," he said smoothly. "But you're too late. We're already airborne." Ethan looked out the window. The ground was falling away. They were in the air. Executive 7 smiled. "The pilot has orders to fly to international waters. You can't stop this. And even if you could, killing me accomplishes nothing. I'm just one piece of a much larger machine." Ethan walked forward and pressed his pistol against the man's forehead. "Tell the pilot to turn around. Now. Or what? You shoot me? Then you crash and die too. You don't have the stomach for suicide missions." "You're right," Ethan said. "I don't." He turned and fired 3 shots into the cockpit door lock. It shattered. He kicked the door open and pointed his weapon at the pilot. "Land this plane. Now." The pilot's face went white. "We just took off." "I can't." Ethan fired a shot past his head into the instrument panel. Sparks flew. Warning lights flashed. "Land it, or I put the next round through your skull." The pilot's hands shook as he turned the aircraft around. 2 minutes later, they touched down hard on the runway. Emergency vehicles surrounded them immediately. Stone's team stormed aboard. They dragged Executive 7 out in handcuffs. The man's calm facade finally cracked. He was screaming about diplomatic immunity and legal representation. Stone walked up to Ethan as medics checked his injuries. "That was the stupidest, most reckless thing I've ever seen." "Did it work?" Stone allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, it worked." He held up a briefcase they'd recovered from the plane. Executive 7 was carrying his insurance policy. Names, dates, bank accounts. Every corrupt official involved in the weapons trafficking ring. This goes all the way to Senate staffers and defense contractors. Ethan felt exhaustion crash over him. Is it over? The arrests are just beginning. But yes, it's over. Stone put a hand on his shoulder. "You did it, Cole. You exposed the biggest military corruption scandal in American history. 23 dead soldiers can finally rest in peace. Ethan looked at the sky. Dawn was breaking over the horizon. He thought of his teammates who never got to see another sunrise. They deserved better than this, he said quietly. They did. But because of you, they got justice. 3 days later, Ethan stood outside a military detention facility in Quantico. Admiral Stone had arranged for him to see Wade one final time before the court-martial began. You don't have to do this, Stone said. Wade is going away for life. You've already won. I need to look him in the eye, Ethan replied. I need him to know what he destroyed. Stone nodded and led him inside. They walked through security checkpoints and locked corridors until they reached a solitary cell. 2 guards stood watch outside. Wade sat on a metal bench in prison uniform. His right hand was bandaged where Ethan's bullet had shattered it. When he saw Ethan, something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, not regret, just cold calculation. Lieutenant Cole. Wade's voice was steady. Come to hear me beg for mercy? Ethan sat down across from him behind the reinforced glass. I came to understand why. Why did you do it? You were a decorated officer. You had respect. Honor. Wade laughed bitterly. Honor? What did honor ever give me? I spent 25 years serving this country. I watched politicians send good men to die for oil and politics. I watched defense contractors make billions while soldiers came home in body bags. He leaned forward. I decided if everyone else was getting rich off war, why shouldn't I? So you sold out your own men? You murdered American soldiers for money. I eliminated security risks. Big difference. Wade's face hardened. Those men you're crying about? They would have exposed my operation. They had to go. It was business. Ethan felt rage building in his chest. Business? Jackson had a wife and 2 kids. Martinez was getting married next month. Thompson was saving money to buy his parents a house. You didn't eliminate security risks. You murdered heroes. Heroes? Wade scoffed. They were tools. Soldiers are tools that the government uses and throws away. I just used them more efficiently. Ethan stood up. His fists clenched. Every instinct screamed to break through the glass and finish what he'd started. But he forced himself to breathe, to stay calm. You're right about one thing, Ethan said quietly. The system is broken. Good men die while corrupt people profit. But the difference between you and them? You wore the uniform. You took an oath. You were supposed to be better. Wade's expression didn't change. Oaths are for idealists. I live in the real world. Then enjoy living in a cell for the rest of your life. Ethan turned to leave. Wait, Wade called out. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. What about Executive 7? What about the others? They'll get lawyers. They'll cut deals. I'll be the only one who pays. Ethan looked back. Executive 7 confessed everything to avoid the death penalty. He's giving testimony against 15 Pentagon officials, 8 senators, and dozens of defense contractors. The entire network is collapsing. He paused. You're not the only one who's paying, but you'll pay the most. Because you didn't just betray your country. You betrayed your brothers. Wade's face went pale. They're all turning on each other? Every single one. Your lawyer can explain it during your trial. Ethan knocked on the door. The guards opened it. Goodbye, Marcus. I hope those 23 ghosts haunt you every night for the rest of your miserable life. He walked out and didn't look back. Stone was waiting in the hallway. Feel better? No, Ethan admitted. But it needed to be done. They drove to a different facility across the base. This one was a family housing unit under military protection. Stone stopped outside a small cottage. They're inside, Stone said. I'll give you privacy. Ethan's hands shook as he walked to the door. He hadn't seen Jennifer and Emma since this nightmare began. He didn't know what condition they'd be in, what trauma Wade's men had inflicted. He knocked. The door opened. Jennifer stood there with tears streaming down her face. She looked exhausted but unhurt. Behind her, Emma peeked out with her stuffed bear clutched tight. Ethan, Jennifer whispered. He couldn't speak. He just pulled them both into his arms and held on like he'd never let go. Jennifer sobbed against his chest. Emma wrapped her small arms around his leg. Daddy, the bad men said you weren't coming back, Emma said in her tiny voice. Ethan knelt down and looked into his daughter's eyes. I'll always come back for you. Always. I promise. They went inside and sat together on the couch. Jennifer held his hand so tight it hurt. Emma refused to leave his lap. They told us you were a traitor, Jennifer said through tears. They said terrible things. But I knew it wasn't true. I knew you'd prove them wrong. It's over now, Ethan said softly. Wade and his people are in prison. We're safe. What happens next? Jennifer asked. Do you go back to the Navy? Ethan thought about that. The life he'd had before was gone. He couldn't pretend the last week hadn't changed him. He'd seen the darkness in the system he'd served. The corruption. The betrayal. I don't know, he admitted. Admiral Stone offered me a position investigating military corruption, making sure what happened with Wade never happens again. Jennifer studied his face. Is that what you want? I want to make sure no other soldier's family goes through what we did. I want those 23 men to mean something. He looked at Emma. But I also want to be here for you both. To be the father and husband you deserve. You've always been that, Jennifer said firmly. You saved lives. You stopped a terrorist attack. You exposed traitors. Our daughter will grow up knowing her father is a true hero. Emma looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. Are you a superhero, Daddy? Ethan smiled despite everything. No, sweetheart. I'm just a soldier who did his job. That's what makes you a hero, Jennifer said. They sat together in silence as the sun set outside. For the first time in a week, Ethan felt peace. The war was over. His family was safe. Justice had been served. But in the back of his mind, he knew this was just the beginning. Wade's arrest had exposed a massive network of corruption. Dozens of investigations were opening. Hundreds of cases would need review. The fight for justice was far from over. But tonight, Ethan wasn't a warrior. He was just a father holding his daughter and a husband grateful his wife still believed in him. Tomorrow he would face whatever came next. Tonight, he was home. 6 months had passed since that night at the airfield. The military courthouse in Washington, D.C. was packed with families, journalists, and military officials. This was the biggest court-martial in American history. Ethan sat in the front row wearing his dress uniform. His silver star and purple heart gleamed on his chest. Beside him sat Jennifer holding Emma's hand. Behind them were the families of the 23 soldiers Wade had murdered. The judge entered, and everyone stood. This court is now in session for the case of United States versus Colonel Marcus Wade and co-conspirators. Wade was led and wearing shackles. His expensive lawyers sat beside him looking defeated. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, but the verdict was never in doubt. Executive 7 had already been sentenced to 40 years without parole. His testimony had brought down 12 Pentagon officials, 6 senators, and 32 defense contractors. The corruption network that had operated for over a decade was completely destroyed. Now it was Wade's turn. The judge read the charges. Treason, murder, conspiracy, weapons trafficking, 23 counts of premeditated homicide. Colonel Marcus Wade, you have been found guilty on all counts. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say? Wade stood slowly. He looked at the families in the courtroom. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Shame? But when he spoke, his voice was flat and emotionless. I have nothing to say except that I did what I thought was necessary. History will judge whether I was right. Angry shouts erupted from the families. The judge banged his gavel. Order. One more outburst, and I'll clear this courtroom. When silence returned, the judge continued. Marcus Wade, you betrayed every principle the uniform stands for. You murdered American heroes. You sold out your country for profit. There is no punishment severe enough for what you've done. The judge paused and locked eyes with Wade. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without possibility of parole in a maximum security military prison. You will serve 23 consecutive life sentences, 1 for each soldier you murdered. You will never see freedom again. The gavel struck. It was over. Wade was led away in chains. As he passed Ethan, their eyes met one final time. Ethan saw no remorse there, just empty coldness. Some men couldn't be redeemed. Outside the courthouse, journalists swarmed with questions. Admiral Stone stepped forward to address them. Today justice was served. The men and women who gave their lives serving this nation can finally rest in peace. Their families have closure, and the American people can trust that corruption within our military will not be tolerated. A reporter called out, "What about Lieutenant Ethan Cole? He was accused of treason but is now being called a hero." Stone gestured for Ethan to join him. Reluctantly, Ethan stepped forward. "Lieutenant Cole risked everything to expose this conspiracy," Stone said. "He lost his career, his reputation, and nearly his life to seek justice for his fallen brothers. He represents the best of what it means to be a soldier. Loyal, courageous, honorable." Another reporter asked, "Lieutenant Cole, what's next for you?" Ethan looked at Jennifer and Emma standing nearby, then at the families of his fallen teammates who were hugging and crying tears of relief. "I'm taking a position with Naval Criminal Investigative Service," Ethan said. "My job will be investigating corruption and protecting the men and women who serve. What happened to my team will never happen again. Not on my watch." The crowd applauded. Families came forward to shake his hand and thank him through tears. Later that evening, Ethan stood at Arlington National Cemetery. 23 new headstones marked the graves of Wade's victims. Their names were finally cleared, their honor restored. Ethan placed his hand on the headstone of Sergeant David Jackson, his closest friend from the team. "We got him, brother," Ethan whispered. "Wade's gone. The whole network is gone. You can rest now." The wind rustled through the trees. For a moment, Ethan could almost hear Jackson's laugh. Feel his presence one last time. Jennifer appeared beside him and took his hand. Emma placed flowers on each grave. "They'd be proud of you," Jennifer said softly. "I just did what any of them would have done for me," Ethan replied. They walked back through the cemetery as the sun set over the nation's capital. Somewhere in the distance, taps played for another fallen hero. Ethan thought about everything he'd lost and everything he'd gained. His innocence was gone. His trust in the system was shattered. But he'd found something more important. Purpose. He would spend the rest of his career making sure no soldier was betrayed by the people they trusted. No family would suffer what his had suffered. No hero would die for someone else's greed. Wade was in prison. Executive 7 was in prison. The corrupt network was destroyed. But more importantly, 23 American soldiers were finally honored as the heroes they were. Their names would be remembered. Their sacrifice would mean something. As Ethan walked away from Arlington with his family, he made one final promise to his fallen brothers. "Your legacy isn't how you died. It's that you served with honor. And I'll make sure the world never forgets that." The gates of Arlington closed behind them. Night fell over the cemetery. But the memory of heroes would shine forever. Justice had been served. The fight was over. And Lieutenant Ethan Cole could finally go home.